What's up, everyone? Welcome not just to NBA Crunch Time, but the final NBA Crunch Time of the 2024-2025 NBA season. I am your host, TJ Zwarich, taking you through Game 7 of the NBA Finals between the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Indiana Pacers. It's been an incredible series so far. Gotta love any time we can get a Game 7 in the finals. And it's going to be a little bit of a boring stretch here before we get back to NFL after the NBA season ends. Thankfully, we still have MLB. We got some golf, but we got a big slate tonight that we got to talk through before we get any types of breaks. And to help me get through it all, we got the guy who's been with us through most of these finals so far, Kyle Murray. How you doing, Kyle?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I think we should cherish this Game 7. We haven't gotten many of them recently, so it's definitely going to be an interesting atmosphere in the NBA. I know we've had a couple in the NHL lately, but yeah, feels like it's a very rare instance. So let's enjoy it. Let's make some money tonight.
Got a shout out to Tyrone in chat who says, "Good job, fellas, on Thursday. Came in second place. Great job, my friend. Congratulations to you. Let's keep it going tonight." And to help us keep it going tonight, we got my man, the Chief, Will Priester. How you doing, Will?
I'm good, man. Glad to come on and hang out with you guys. I love NBA. You guys know I coach basketball, and so to be able to close this thing out, this could be a better finish to the season for me. So good to see you guys. Glad to come chop it up. I feel like I don't play enough single game throughout the season. Like, I still feel like that's a hole in my DFS game. Like, I know the contests sometimes aren't as good, but I mean, I've done really well in single game when I've just decided that I'm going to do it all the time. And so my DFS resolution for the next NBA season is to play more single game throughout the season rather than just the playoffs.
I like it. Couldn't agree more. That's something I started doing in NFL, and it really benefited me because, well, you and I like to do those NFL showdown shows together, and they went pretty darn well for us. So that was something I tried to make sure I was doing throughout the NFL season as well. Mr. Irrelevant in chat says, "Hope nobody's girl is watching the show. Kyle came ready to steal them." Looking good for Game 7 of the NBA Finals. Kyle, we've had an incredible series so far. The Pacers, some expected it, but have been playing some great basketball to keep it tight with the heavy favorites, Oklahoma City Thunder. How do you think Game 7 is going to go from a DFS perspective? Oh, you are muted.
Sorry about that. I had to mute myself because Mr. Rel was making me blush just in case I said something silly. But I think from a DFS perspective, I don't want to, toot our own horns, but we've been kind of hitting these on the nail, at least through, I would say, 4 or 5 out of the big games. So that's been really nice. Last game, we had the Siakam and McConnell big calls. That was, I think, both of our Field in the Plums plays for myself and Chop. So that was a good way to kind of round out the series. Hopefully we can finish out here. But from a DFS perspective, again, I feel like a lot of the strategy is going to be the same for me. Like I said, it's kind of been paying off so far. I think from a real life perspective, that's sort of where I've personally been wrong. Obviously, I came in saying that Thunder were going to win this series in 5 or 6. That clearly did not happen. I still think the Thunder win tonight, but I mean, the Pacers have been defying what I've been saying and defying a lot of logic throughout the course of not only the finals, but just the playoffs in general. I saw a tweet that they were, and looking at their Vegas odds, so that kind of backs up that as well. So I think it's going to be an interesting game for sure. I will say, though, I do think the Game 7 environment brings in a new layer of just narratives and angles inside the DFS landscape, I suppose, and that comes through in the total, right? For games 1 through 6, we saw totals in the mid 220s, 224, 225. I think in one of the games earlier, it was even at 226. Down to 214.5 for this one, 215 on some books. So, I mean, that goes to show right there that we should be expecting less fantasy production and less scoring in general in this game. I think that's the Game 7 environment, playing out right there in the Vegas line. So I think that's a big thing and a big angle to take account for here for Game 7.
Great points were made, and there was a incredibly newsworthy and noteworthy thing that happened in the NBA today, but the fact that they let that go down on Game 7 and announced it all on Game 7 instead of just saying, hey, maybe let's wait to push this through for a day or two. That seemed crazy to me, but alas, it happened. We will touch on it, but not until after our protest. Not until after our Game 7 breakdown. We are focusing on the finals first and foremost. Chief, what do you think about how this series has played out so far? How do you think tonight's going to
go? To be honest with you, man, and maybe I'm in the minority here, but I feel like this series has played out like it should play out. When you get to the finals, and if these teams make it to the finals, basically what we're essentially saying is these are the two best teams in the NBA. And, I know that Indiana was an unlikely team, but you get hot at the right time. Boston has some costly injuries, and lo and behold, I mean, if you look at the Eastern Conference, Indiana might actually have been one of the better teams still healthy at the time. Like New York had injuries, Boston had injuries, Milwaukee falling apart. The Sixers never really even got going. So, you look over the landscape, this is the one team that kind of kept it together, held it in the road a bit, and got hot at the right time. I'm saying all that to say I do think OKC wins tonight. But I think when you're looking at the finals and you're saying you've got the two best teams playing each other in the NBA, I expect Game 7s. And so this has actually been a pretty good series. Two small market teams. So this is, shout out to the small markets. My favorite teams in the small market, they just can't get right. I don't know if the Charlotte Hornets will make it to a finals appearance in my lifetime. I'd like to think so, but God, so many bad front office decisions. Not going down that rabbit hole, but I essentially appreciate seeing this Game 7, and I think OKC pulls it off. This is why you fight hard to get home court advantage, and I think that swings in their favor tonight, especially coming off of a huge blowout win in Indiana. They probably, realistically, man, if you play sports, you know how it is. You want to win this on your home floor anyway. Like they didn't want to get blown out, but I think mentally it was just like, look, man, we got one more game. Let's just get this thing at home and close it out in style in front of our fans. As a competitor, you want to win them all, but in the back of your mind, when you've got that one game in your back pocket and you're going home, that could affect anybody. So I think OKC closes out tonight for what it's worth.
All right, let's start getting into it. We will do things how we've been doing it all series. We'll start on DraftKings. We'll then go to FanDuel. We'll take you through kind of a build on each of them, what we think would be our favorite build, to sort of doing like a single entry / large field tournament setting.
Can we start tonight? Is that possible?
Heck yeah, absolutely. We can start on FanDuel tonight. So just hold on. Let me switch up the screen share before I pull it up. We'll go through a little bit of a build on both of the sites. Make sure that we hold on. There we go. It doesn't show up for me unless I bring the screen up. There we go. Switching it over. Having trouble multitasking and talking about one thing while doing another thing. So instead, you're just getting my play-by-play breakdown of exactly what I'm doing. There we go. We'll take you through a build on each of the sites. And then, of course, we will take your questions as well. Get them into the YouTube chat. Get them into the RotoGrinders live stream Discord chat. All that we ask is that if you're watching us on YouTube, hit the like button. I was reading Lord King Guru in chat who said Hartenstein is a lock for him on FanDuel. Hit the like button. Subscribe. Hit the notification bell. Kyle, throw it to you. Or Chief, I'll throw it to you for FanDuel MVP. What do you plan to do with SGA, who is projecting for about 30% ownership, but especially in single entry, large field stuff, I think for Game 7, he's going to be bumped even higher just because he's the guy and it's Game 7.
So let me ask you guys this. Here's why I want to start with FanDuel, and it speaks to what Kyle's talking about in terms of how soft the pricing's been pretty much throughout. And I think, TJ, I think you and I were kind of joking about this earlier. Like, DraftKings gotten tighter and feels like FanDuel's gotten softer as this thing is going along. Here's my question. I feel like there are two builds, and it's whether or not these guys show up. But in my mind, I feel like it's Aaron Nesmith MVP or SGA MVP. I don't really want to go in between tonight. Because here's what I'm saying. If I go Nesmith MVP because he's the cheap guy that's absolutely going to play minutes, we think with Carlisle, I can literally just load up on studs and then I have to play one other bench guy, or I play SGA MVP. I pretty much hit the lock button on Aaron Nesmith in my head because of the pricing, and then I flip-flop different lineups around that. If you're multi-entering like that, to me, that's the way to go in one game DFS, single game DFS. But that's why I wanted to start with FanDuel, because I feel like the contrast between Nesmith and SGA is like the discussion. But once again, you guys may have a different thought. Those are my thoughts. What are you thinking?
Let me take you one further, and I think you could even do Hartenstein, who's even cheaper if you really, really wanted to. But yeah, I feel like, fair. Kyle, that it's been rare that the SGA and MVP train has let us down, especially on FanDuel, where you can still pretty much afford to do whatever you want with him if you put him there at MVP.
Yeah, so I think for Game 7 for an MVP discussion, I think it comes down to either two ways of thinking, right? One is scoring is going to be down, which I think we can agree we should expect. I think that if scoring is higher than it's been throughout the series, that would be an outlier. I don't think we're going to see a 10-point drop in a series in a Game 7 without expecting that. So if that's going to be the case, which I think most people can agree on, either one, the highest scoring player, especially someone like SGA, who can account for so much of just the total output of fantasy points, you're going to need that in the MVP. Or you can say that lower scoring in general is going to lower SGA's score and allow other players to sort of enter that realm of having the range of outcomes to match him or be in that discussion. So in terms of building around that, I still don't think I'm going down too far on FanDuel, just because you just have so much salary opened up with all these cheap guys. Like you can name probably 3-4 guys who are in the sub 4 to 5K range in the utility spot that you can legitimately not only say they're probably going to play 30, but could lock them in for like 28 to 30 plus minutes. That's just not very common in terms of finding these cheap guys with that much playing time. So I think the fact that you can build so easily with a couple of these cheap guys, like Lou Dort at 2-2 in the utility spot, he's going to play 30 plus minutes. Caruso, like Nesmith could play 30, Nemhard will play 30. So all these guys who are going to be on the floor being so cheap in the utility spot just lead me to locking up SGA in the MVP spot. I think he's going to be the guy for me. And also, I think when I'm assuming that there's going to be lower scoring in general in this game, I think the one person that probably impacts the least is SGA, because I do think we just see his volume increase, which again will only hurt the players around him, especially the top end guys like Williams and Chet. So yeah, for me, it's going to be SGA for the most part up at the top. If I'm not playing SGA, it's probably going to be Siakam. Honestly, that's pretty much what it's been for the entire series, and it's worked out. So that's going to be kind of how I approach it. But on FanDuel specifically, it's going to be mostly SGA. I will say I think it's maybe important to touch on the Halliburton issue. Obviously, we touched on it at length for the Game 6 show. And, I mean, he did look pretty healthy. We only got to see him for 22 minutes or so. So we don't really have a great feel for, what his top-end minutes was going to look like. I mean, the game was a blowout by, the 6-minute mark in the second quarter. So we really don't have a great feel for top-end minutes. I was talking about it on a different show before this. I think he could play 38 minutes. I think he also played 28 minutes. So that's why we kind of have the median here at 33 minutes for Halliburton. But also I think from a leverage standpoint, if you want to lean into that volatility, there's going to be a lot of people who don't want to do that. So if that's the case and you want to lean into that volatility and accept that I could play Halliburton and he could get outscored by McConnell and Nesmith if he doesn't play enough minutes. But if he does play those top in 38 minutes and he does compete with SGA, obviously he's going to be coming in at half the ownership, probably even less in the MVP spot. So for me, it's just probably going to be one of those three guys with a heavy skew towards SGA and MVP.
If we are doing an SGA MVP build, Kyle, who would be your priority of the tier twos? Pascal Siakam, Jalen Williams, Tyrese Halliburton. You can even include Chet Holmgren in that tier as well, since it's a huge. He's basically his solo tier 3.
Essentially.
So, like, are you interested in Chet? Who would you prioritize of Pascal Siakam, Halliburton? And then rank your top 3 cheap guys as well. We have Steven Smith in chat. I believe that's Yappy Cappy in Discord as well. He's getting to a ton of Miles Turner because of how cheap he is. He does not want this Miles Turner. Help him not get this Miles Turner.
Yeah, I mean, look, Miles Turner is really cheap, right? And he's kind of earned that price tag, which, isn't typically a good thing when you're talking about someone earning a price tag. Usually you're talking about guys being expensive and earning that price tag, but Miles Turner has not been good. But it seems like they want to have him on the floor late in these games, which might be a questionable decision. But if he's going to be on the floor, he's going to have opportunity to produce, especially at that cheap price tag. And there's really not a ton of guys down here that have massive ceilings. So Turner, especially on FanDuel, where I know his block upside has been limited in this series, just with Chet playing a lot at the 5, pulling Turner away from the basket. That's been hurting his block upside. But he still does have 3-4 block upside in this one. And again, on FanDuel, you get more points for that than on DraftKings. That is beneficial. In terms of my favorite tier 2 option, it's definitely going to be Siakam. Holmgren, I do think. I don't like Holmgren. I bet his under on his PRA. I don't like him tonight. But the price does bring him into play because he is cheap enough to where he is, like you guys mentioned, a tier 3 player, but he's been priced as a tier 2 guy pretty much all series. So I do think he's in play because of his cheaper price. The one thing I will say is you're probably able to start, even if you don't like Chet, you could probably start with Siakam, Williams, Halliburton, 2 of those 3, as well as SGA, and you can still build a very strong lineup. Like I just built one right now with those 3 guys locked in. And then you have Dort, Hartenstein at the bottom, and then Yappy's favorite player, Miles Turner, in there as well. So there's a plethora of options. If you don't like those guys, you can go to Obi Top and you can find money to get up to McConnell. You can punt even more. So, yeah, I think for the most part, you're building around at least 2 of those guys as well as SGA. If you want to put Chet into that rotation, you definitely can. But, yeah, you're probably starting with 3 of those top guys.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And, looking at that cheap group, even though Miles Turner is so cheap, I still like him less than McConnell, Nembhard, Caruso, Toppin, Neesmith, Hartenstein. Like everybody else in that range, I still think I like better. Chief, how about you? If we're doing the cheap route up top, the Aaron Neesmiths or Obi Toppin, somebody else up there, we still can play every single expensive guy we want. Where it gets slightly tougher is if you do the SGA up top route. Do you agree? Would you be trying to get at least 2 of Siakam, Williams, Halliburton, Holmgren, and then rank your top 3 McConnell and below guys for us over on FanDuel?
Top 3 McConnell and below for me: Neesmith, Caruso, and Nembhard, and Toppin is probably a 1A, 1B, or 3A, 3B, if you will. And then what was your other question, TJ?
How many studs would you be looking to play with SGA in an SGA MVP lineup, and which among those studs would you be choosing?
Right now I've got Siakam for what it's worth. I do have a few $100 remaining, which I do like on these slates. I don't ever want to hit max salary because I already know it's going to be a massive chop fest. But that's where I am right now. And I guess that's why I was kind of thinking through a slightly different build tonight. If I got one of these cheap guys at MVP, and just kind of speaking to Kyle's point, it was a tad bit lower scoring ish from fantasy. Like, let's say SGA topped out at 49 fantasy points tonight, as an example, and I got one of, I'll use Aaron Neesmith. I think he's my favorite cheap guy tonight on FanDuel. He ends up around like 25. Like, I'm able to get SGA and Williams and Siakam. I can just do something slightly different. That was really my reason for thinking through that build for a game 7. But it's Siakam over J. Will for me, even though that he's on the road. I think Siakam is needed more in this situation than Jalen Williams is, for what it's worth. With Halliburton hampered a bit, whether he plays 38 minutes, Kyle, or 28, I still think he's not right. And he's going to give it his all because it's the finals. But I think Siakam, they're going to need him to do more if they're going to win this game. And so I'm siding with Siakam over Williams.
All right, let's make the pivots over to DraftKings, where it is quite a bit different of a build because you still have SGA priced up top, expensive, but we don't have these cheap value options. Like, if you want to go cheap, you're looking at Benedict Mathurin, who is fine, but below that, it's just Aaron Wiggins, Kason Wallace. Maybe you want to punt with Tony Bradley. It's a lot tougher. You can't just play a plethora of the TJ McConnells, Obi Toppins, Aaron Neesmiths like you can over on FanDuel. So, Chief, I'll keep it with you. We actually have SGA going significantly over-owned here at the captain position on DraftKings. What would you be doing? Would you be prioritizing him or looking to go elsewhere?
Well, this is where it gets tricky for me because right now I'm kind of in a similar situation. I don't feel like I have enough Shea captain on DraftKings, and I think part of that is because this person on DraftKings is a little bit more restrictive because the bench guys are a little bit more expensive, if that makes any sense. In my head, I'm with Kyle. I feel like SGA is the highest scoring guy on the slate. But does Siakam do enough to get close to where I can save, a few $1,000s at captain? I mean, because it's a big deal right now, or a big jump between 15-9 and 21-6 at captain, and being able to play Siakam at captain, and then being able to grab some of these other guys and kind of balance it out a little bit more. Not saying that, we don't need to play SGA, but I think Siakam's actually my favorite captain on DraftKings for what it's worth. I think you're muted, TJ.
I am. The dogs were barking. Kyle, how about you? Up top, you go in SGA, or you looking to make a pivot?
Yeah, I still think SGA is probably the guy I'm looking at the most, but I will say I do think other options are a little bit more plausible on DraftKings than they are on FanDuel, just because DraftKings, to save money the way that you do on FanDuel, right, where you have, the guys like Lou Dort, Hartenstein right around that 2K range. To do that, you have to go down to guys who could legit not play. Like Aaron Wiggins has DNP upside tonight. It's probably not likely, but it's in the range of outcomes. Ben Mathurin, same way. I mean, they'll probably get a couple minutes, but I mean, they have a pretty decent, likelihood to go under where we have them projected minutes wise, just with game flow, especially Mathurin, a guy whose minutes are very hit or miss depending on if he has a shot going or not. But for Aaron Wiggins, like if Lou Dort plays 38 minutes, let's say he plays every single minute that Halliburton plays, and Halliburton ends up playing 38 minutes, Wiggins could play 6 minutes. You don't really have risk like that on FanDuel when you're going down price range wise. So I do think that some of these other options, like Will was alluding to open up those, $2,000-$3,000 worth of savings in the captain spot. Obviously, you're still playing SGA in the utility, but I do think, guys like Siakam, again, even Halliburton, sure, lots of risk, but the ceiling is still there. Even Jalen Williams, especially if you're not playing SGA in the captain, I think you should probably up your interest in Jalen Williams, whether it be captain or utility. But I do think the pricing on DraftKings does sort of open up the board a little bit more for what you can do. SGA is probably still the guy I'm most likely looking towards. Siakam would be second, and then Jalen Williams, and then probably Tyrese Halliburton. I don't know if I'm getting a ton more cute than that in terms of going down the board. Like, again, same concept last game with TJ McConnell, where, like, let's say things are really bad for Halliburton's calf, and McConnell has to play, upwards of 24, 25 plus minutes, and he plays well. He is one of the few guys I think down here that has upside to score 40 fantasy points. I think he got right around there last game. I think it was like 39 pretty much. And he did that in 24 minutes. So, I mean, that was pretty much exactly what I outlined in game 6. I think that could definitely happen once again here in game 7. So McConnell is a guy who I don't mind going down the board to, but I do think if you're going to go down there, you want guys with upside. And there's probably not too many guys down here I feel that way with other than McConnell. I do think Neesmith has a bit of a ceiling as well. We haven't seen it in this series yet, but I mean, we saw it in game 1 against the Knicks. We saw it a couple times in the Cleveland series. His minutes have just been so up and down. Most of them is foul trouble for the variance for his minutes there. I mean, he's fouled out in 2 games. He had 5 fouls in game 5, 4 fouls last game when they didn't even really play the second half. So the foul trouble has been a problem for Neesmith, but I think if he is able to stay out of foul trouble, people probably won't be as high on him as they probably would be if he was projecting for 32-plus minutes. So if I'm going down the board, it's probably just going to be McConnell, maybe a little bit of Neesmith. But for the most part, my captain options are going to be SGA, Siakam, TJ McConnell, and then one of Jalen Williams or Tyrese Halliburton.
All right, let's look to the flex spots. And if we are picking one of these top guys, what is going on here with my screen share? Why can't I find it?
Well, while you're doing that, let me just say my build, it's trying to force way more Chet at captain than I'm comfortable with, for what it's worth. It is trying to force me there, though, if anybody want to know that. But I'm doing my part to ignore what it's trying to force me to do.
Yeah, I do think the tiering is the same on DraftKings, like we talked about on FanDuel, where Chet's kind of in that tier 3 category. And like I said, I don't like Chet tonight. I bet his under on his PRA. But regardless, the price is pretty solid for a guy who we can probably safely assume is going to play mid-30s minutes. But I do agree. He's definitely not – he'd be my favorite option of those top 5 guys.
Yeah.
All right, let's start looking at the utility. And I think, unlike FanDuel, where you can get 3 of these top guys on DraftKings, you're probably just getting 2. Whether you're playing SGA, Jalen Williams, or Pascal Siakam, or even Tyrese Halliburton, a captain, you can still fit one of them in other one in the captain fairly easily. Mid-range build, I do think, is still viable. 3 of them, if you're not doing SGA captain, is possible if you want to do like a full-out punt like Tony Bradley. But again, he might not even see the floor tonight, and that's something I would only be looking at, I think, if you were playing multiple lineups today. Not just multiple as in 3, but multiple as in like 20. Then I think you start building those type of lineups. But Kyle, we'll keep it with you. Regardless of who you're picking up top, for me in my one lineup build today, I found it with Siakam just because I needed like every dollar I could to make sure I'm actually playing people who I know will be on the floor. Because I'm only playing one lineup. It's small field. I didn't make it into the massive up top contest tonight because I just didn't check the contest in time, so I didn't get in. So I'm just in small field stuff tonight, single entry exclusive. And so I need every dollar that I can. And so I ended up with Siakam at captain. Who would you be looking to go to first among the utilities to kind of start your build around?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I do think that you're going to have to get a little uncomfortable with a couple of these, bottom of the bucket guys, because I do think it's just impossible to build a lineup without SGA, whether it's captain or utility. So, if you're not having SGA in your captain, I do think it's wide. I know the projections don't necessarily like that, but again, just from building around sheer upside, because again, like these showdowns, you're not really playing to min cash. Or at least I don't think you should be. So if that's the case, if you're chasing upside, there's a real chance that SGA accounts for like 25 to 30% of fantasy points on the slate. So, which sounds like a lot, but if it's going to be a low scoring slate, SGA could definitely do that. And if that's the case, you're going to need him. Whether it's captain or utility. So then that sort of does make you get uncomfortable with some of these bottom of the bucket guys. My favorites under, I guess the 5K range, Neesmith and Dort are my 2 favorites down here. I mentioned Aaron Wiggins having some potential DNP upside. I probably wouldn't want to play Dort and Wiggins together. I think the best path to Wiggins is either A, he gets hot from 3 and he earns some more minutes, or Dort gets into foul trouble and Wiggins plays some more. Wiggins has been really good at home, which has kind of been a common theme with role players, playing well at home in the finals and in the postseason. So Wiggins is a guy that I think is worth mentioning down here. But other than that, it does get a little uncomfortable. So I like kind of starting with both of these cheap guys, Neesmith and Dort, and then you can kind of open up salary a little bit after that.
Chief, how about you? Are you on the Neesmith train over here on DraftKings, just like FanDuel? What do you think of this sort of core of Siakam, SGA, Neesmith to start a lineup? Would you go differently, or would you like this as kind of a core starting point as well?
Yeah, I feel like Neesmith's kind of my secondary guy tonight. Like the other guy, I'm willing to go all in on just because of the price relative to everybody else. And I know it's not a big gap between him and Obi Toppin and Miles Turner and TJ. But I feel like there's enough, and so he's a guy I think I'm interested in. And part of that is because I still feel like this is going to be a committee approach here in terms of if Halliburton's not quite there, they're going to need all of these guys to contribute in some way, shape, or form. So I think he's cheap enough to bite the bullet and borderline go all in. Like on FanDuel, I'm pretty much all in. DraftKings, not quite as all in, but I'm close enough. So don't mind him at all. I think if there's one other guy for me tonight, listen, man, I'm gonna go back to something from the guys on TNT. Who are the others? Shaq would always mention the others. Who are the guys that can possibly get it done tonight at home, back in front of those home fans? So Alex Caruso is a guy that I'm probably a little bit more interested in on DraftKings also, compared to like Miles Turner or Obi Toppin. This is a guy that I think will play minutes tonight. And so he's another guy that I like. Getting lower ownership than some of these other guys too, at least projected. Lower ownership than Nembhard, lower ownership than McConnell, rightfully so, but also a fair amount lower than Miles Turner. So I think that's an interesting leverage spot, Caruso versus some of those Pacers guys.
Who would be the cheapest you'd be looking to go to on DraftKings if you say can't even fit Mathurin? Because Mathurin, even though he's inconsistent, we do know he's got really high upside. Case on Wallace and below, like who would be your favorite of this group?
It's probably Wallace. Like I really don't want to play any of these guys. But I would say Wallace is probably my guy out of this group, just because I feel like he's had a fairly consistent role all season. Versus Wiggins, I mean, you kind of need Wiggins to hit a couple threes early to get you there. If he doesn't hit those couple threes early in this game, like more than likely his fantasy output is going to be non-existent. At least with Wallace, I know I got a chance in other areas.
All right. We don't have Chop today, but we do still need the Feel It in the Plums play of the night. Who is breaking the slate tonight? So, Kyle, I'll throw it to you first. Who do you got breaking the slate?
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough to beat the TJ McConnell call from last game when he was almost the top scorer at that price point. And I'm going to go with a guy who I don't think is going to be a super, high ceiling type player, but I do think he's a guy who could potentially have an outlier game and have a big performance. I'm going to go with Aaron Neesmith here. 5K on DraftKings. I like the call. I know Will has been talking him up as well. Him or Lou Dort would be probably my two options down here. Again, I don't think these are guys who are going to flirt with being amongst the top scorers, but I do think they're guys who can allow you to get a little bit of salary relief, a little bit down the board in terms of pricing.
Chief, how about you? I feel like Kyle might have just stole your guy.
Yeah. So it's okay. Like
you can double down. I don't mind.
You take Neesmith, I'll take Lou Dort.
No. It's all right. I mean, I don't care, Kyle, because it's the last game, and once again on DraftKings with where the pricing sits, he just seems to fit the bill. That's really what this is about. So, I think Neesmith's the guy.
One other I'll throw in there, and let me preface this. This is not data driven. This is simply what the plums are telling me. I just feel it. Not only in my plums, but in my gut. Going with Isaiah Hartenstein.
Okay.
I just feel like in a game that is going to be really, really physical, his rebounding is going to come in crucial. His screen setting is going to come in crucial, and hopefully that'll allow him to contribute a few lob dunks in there as well. I think Isaiah Hartenstein is going to be playing a big role in this game. Let's check if we have any questions here. We do have about 7 minutes until this game starts. So if you have any questions, get them into the RotoGrinders live stream Discord chat. Get them into the YouTube chat as well. And if you got them, we will answer them. But in the meantime, I mentioned we do have a little bit of a sports break, but there are still things like golf, like UFC. A lot of really, really important stuff that you're going to want to have content for. And so the MLB annual DFS option is $425. However, we dropped the price of our Combo Pro product to mirror the MLB package. Might as well get more stuff for the same price, right? Combo Pro 6 months gives you access to our content, tools, and projections for every sport except NASCAR at a cheaper price than the monthly package. You'd actually save about 35% by choosing 6 months instead of monthly. So sign up now for MLB projections, UFC content, PGA data, and more. Plus, be sure to check out our Props and Pick'em package for a discount. The Props and Pick'em package features daily prop picks and fantasy pick'em selections from many of your favorite RotoGrinders experts. We're also knocking 50% off the price of your first month when you sign up at the link down below, right down there in the RotoGrinders description here on YouTube. Let's start taking some questions here. Kyle, I feel like you have done a great job of answering a few Turner questions in chat. So, Chief, I want to throw it to you. What do you think about utilizing Miles Turner tonight, either in the captain / MVP, in the utility, or at all?
I'm bored. I don't want to use him at all. I'm definitely not using him in the captain MVP. I'm just going to be honest. If Miles Turner goes off tonight, you know, you're gonna get the closing my laptop gift. Like that's just what it's gonna be. I'll live with Miles Turner beating me tonight. I mean, once again, this is why you watch these games and you play a little bit of DFS, and I don't see it, man. But I could absolutely be wrong here, but I just don't see it.
Rocket Sauce wants to know if we think it's counterproductive playing Turner and Toppin together on DK, Kyle.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, these guys can get away with it, right? They can have some efficient performances, but in terms of guys who have their minutes that are going to eat away from each other, Toppin and Turner definitely fit that mold. And then I saw a similar question about Dort and Wiggins. Can you play them together if your build is geared towards OKC winning easily? Again, these guys can get there, especially Wiggins. He's a good permanent guy. So let's say he only plays 12 minutes or so, and then Dort plays, 34, 35 minutes. You can still get there, but these are spots where you're sort of limiting your outs, right? So like if you're playing Obi Toppin, he has more outs if Turner's failing because he's going to be able to get more time on the floor in maybe a different couple of ways. And then same thing with Wiggins. If Dort fails, he has more outs and vice versa. So I think that's just something to keep in mind. They can get there, but again, you're just giving yourself more paths to success or into ceiling games.
Alexander the Don asks in Discord, and I am actually going to expand on his questions. He says, who would you roster a captain in DK Cash? And I think the clear, obvious answer is, well, you just play SGA. But I guess my question for both of you, I would like an answer from is, who would you play at DK Cash captain, assuming if you play SGA in Cash, it means you're playing a Kason Wallace or an Andrew Wiggins. If you're not playing SGA captain, still at utility, but if you utilize somebody else at captain, assume that you wouldn't have to have a Kason Wallace or an Aaron Wiggins in your lineup at all. Who would be your Cash captain, Will?
SGA. I mean,
Kyle, how about you?
That's the right call.
Yeah, I think you can also build an SGA captain line, but then just start with Chet as your next spend up guy. Again, I know we've kind of talked about not liking him too much, but you can, if you want to avoid the Kason Wallace tier, that's probably the best way to do it and the safest way. Again, I think in cash, you're just trying to get guys who are going to be on the floor. And if you dip your toes into that case on Wallace tier and below, you're getting a really good chance that you're either having guys who are going to play less minutes than projected. There's some guys down here who might not play at all, be an unexpected DNP. So I think that's probably the best way to do it if you're starting SGA. But if you want to do a non-SGA captain cash lineup, I think probably going to be Siakam for me.
I think you can actually make a build where your second most expensive player in a cash setting, your second most expensive player is Alex Caruso or an Andrew Nembhard, and that could potentially work there as well. But I'm with you. It's kind of either that build, one of Wallace or Wiggins with SGA captain, or you utilize Siakam. I feel like those are the three kind of choices you're rolling with there. Let's see, what else do we have? What are your thoughts on leaving 1K on the board tonight, Chief? I feel like that's an easy no problem in showdowns.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not ever going to fight you on that. Once again, I'll probably let me check. I'll probably get to some of that with my Siakam captain lineups for sure. Just in terms of how it's broken out, and I want to reiterate because I actually think this is really important. Like the fact that, go ahead.
Let me just with 30 seconds left to lob. Who do you like better, Caruso or Toppin?
Caruso.
Same.
And then Kyle, you answered the Shepherd, Wiggins, or Wallace. You went Wiggins one there. There we go. All questions answered. Sorry, Will, continue.
Nah, I just think the Chet being in kind of this no man's land is why we're ending up with Caruso, Nembhard, McConnell. Like that's why Chet's in this weird pricing group by himself where if you play him, you're kind of not getting Jalen Williams and Pascal. Like you're getting one or the other with SGA. If you're playing with SGA, you're pretty much getting all of the Caruso, Nembhard, McConnell, Toppin, Hart. Like that's the group you're getting. So it's going to be interesting to see how this thing unfolds tonight.
We have reached lock. I ended up with, now that it is unchangeable, I can tell you, I ended up with Siakam at captain, SGA at utility, Toppin, Hartenstein, Nesmith, Dort at the utility positions. Just rolled with all guys that I know should be on the court today, barring some foul trouble. And that's the way that I rolled it out. Mr. Irrelevant saying he used Dort at captain today. It's bold, but I hope it works out for you. There's not going to be too many people doing that. So if he happens to hit 6 threes or something crazy, which you never know, it happens at home sometimes.
6. I took under 5.5 attempts for him.
So then hopefully just 5 for 5. 5 for 5.
No, let's just go 4 for 4. Like
don't
go out there spraying it. I don't need heart palpitations watching this game.
JD Eddie says he rolled the same lineup. Yeah, I didn't worry too much about ownership in this one because I'm playing very small field stuff since I missed the big one. So I kept it pretty chalky in this one outside of getting off of SGA at captain. Kyle, Will, anything else for the people before we get out of here?
Negative.
No, it's been a good year. Appreciate everyone tuning in, especially during these NBA final showdowns. It's been fun. So we'll see you next year.
Quick final thoughts. Kevin Durant to Houston for Jalen Green, 10th overall pick, 5 second-round picks, which is one of the weirdest things I've seen in a trade. Just like, yeah, take these guys too. Kyle, what do you think of this trade? Not necessarily who won, but what do you think of it on both sides for Phoenix and for Houston?
Yeah, I mean, I've been seeing a lot of Phoenix didn't get enough back on Twitter, but
I think they gave up too much.
Bottom line, they had to get rid of Kevin Durant either way. Like they weren't retaining him. Obviously, they're looking trending towards a rebuild. I think Jalen Green's not necessarily a franchise guy to build around, but I think he's at least a guy with some upside, maybe some untapped potential. I do think that the Rockets probably got the better end of it because, again, you're getting a guy who could potentially help you win in a postseason series. Jalen Green clearly was not that guy, especially this year. He kind of got put under that microscope and clearly did not flourish there. But I will say I saw a couple comparisons to the SGA Paul George trade a few years ago. I don't think Jalen Green's going to blossom in anything like SGA, but again, that's just kind of the potential that the Suns are sort of trying to trade for. So I think it's a fine trade for both sides.
That's actually kind of how I feel too. You get a good young player on the Phoenix side of things, and for Houston, that's a pretty great starting lineup that you now have with Fred VanVleet, Amen Thompson, Kevin Durant, one of Eason or Smith, and Şengün. That's a pretty nice team there. Will, what are your thoughts?
I thought Houston gave up too much considering where they were in the landscape of things, but that's just me. Like, Kevin Durant's now played on 3 or 4 teams in the past 3 to 4 years. Like it's like, hey, it can't just be the organizations at this point. I mean, we've seen them go from OKC to Golden State. Obviously, got it done there. Those guys had a great run, but then we've seen them in Brooklyn, Phoenix, now Houston. And I love Kevin Durant, by the way. Like, Kevin Durant just want to play basketball. Like, if you hear him talk, he just wants to play basketball. But at some point, like, we got to figure out, is he going to stick and stay?
My thoughts on the trade, I have more thoughts about Miami than I do Houston and the Suns. I think it's borderline incompetence to not want to give up, assuming the reports are correct, borderline incompetence to not want to give up Jovic, Highsmith, or who's the other one, Hawkes, to make this trade work. You got a season without Boston probably having Tatum. Maybe he's back for the playoffs, but you get a potentially a Tatumless Boston for a year in a conference where there's no top dog. There's a bunch of good teams, but no top dog. Like, Durant would fit perfectly with Bam and Harrow.
And they booted Highsmith and Hawkes from the rotation at random times throughout the year. So it's not like these are guys they're relying on. Like, I think Hawkes has some upside, but like Highsmith you can find a replacement there easily. So that was an interesting move as well.
It reminds me so much of when the Lakers were trying to add a third star, but they didn't want to give up Talen Horton-Tucker. And it's like,
oh yeah,
what? Who? Anyways, that'll do it. Thank you so much, everyone, for a wonderful, wonderful NBA season. We'll be back throughout the week with MLB. It is, of course, almost NFL season just around the corner. Thank you so much for joining us. Good luck in all your contests tonight. On behalf of myself, Kyle, and Chief, that'll do it for this year's NBA Crunch Time. We'll see you next time.